All right, Team Buck, welcome back. Let's continue our discussion, shall we, of good faith, bad faith, and whether or not Democrats have any principles. This will be a fun one. They often talk about institutions and their need to censure Trump because of the way that he is a threat to our institutions. This is an area where they're particularly dishonest. Oh, by the way, if they were so serious about the threat to the republic that they say is the basis for this impeachment proceeding, they don't have time to get Bolton to come speak to them. Why is that? Oh, because they have to ram this whole thing through in the next few weeks. They've got to get this done right away, because if they don't, then they know it is very likely that there will be Democrat senators who should be on the campaign trail who are actually part of a Senate trial for Trump after the Democrats in the House inevitably vote to impeach him. So we know that is going to happen. And then we should ask the question after that, okay, so now what? What comes next? What are they going to do? Well, they're going to do whatever they have to do in order to get this president out of office. That's the only thing that really matters. But on the institution, and they're also going to say that it's obstruction. The White House doesn't do everything they say, then that's obstruction. And they don't have time to get Bolton, though, somehow. Okay. Well, that makes no sense to it. It should make no sense to anybody, because it's all garbage. Elizabeth Warren, who's just running around making all kinds of promises about how the rich are finally going to pay their fair share. Here she is talking about one very important American institution, the Electoral College. Please play clip 4.
As a presidential candidate, what are your thoughts on the Electoral College?
I want to get rid of it. So here's my goal. My goal is to get elected and then to be the last American president elected by the Electoral College. I want the second term to be that I got elected by direct vote. I'm ready. Popular vote. I just think this is how a democracy should work. Call me old-fashioned, but I think the person who gets the most votes should win. So I'm in.
I just think that the person who gets the most votes has to win. Oh, yes, she has so much more of a governance genius than, Madison, than any of the framers, than anybody involved in the Constitution. Oh, no. Elizabeth Warren has a better idea. Let's just do direct vote. We all know why they want this, right? We all know why this is even under discussion. What is the purpose of abolishing, or what is the impetus for abolishing the Electoral College? Well, it's because they believe that they have lost elections unfairly due to the Electoral College, not understanding that, if you're playing a game of basketball, you could always argue that you were going to win, it's just the time ran out. But guess what? The game you're playing is a timed one. Unlike, say, a game of tennis where it's about winning a certain number of games to win. You don't get to change after the fact and say, well, hold on a second. We should have played a different game and I would have won that one. And Democrats are very, very comfortable with this. It's pretty straightforward why the Electoral College has a role. If you did not have an Electoral College, well, then you would just have the largest population centers in the country become the battleground for all politics. And then people living in other parts of the country, U.S. soil, geographic territory, that would be all of a sudden completely extraneous to our politics. They wouldn't really care. And those of you who live in Montana, in Indiana, in Nebraska, you'd get far less attention. The coast, you'd essentially have coastal dominance of our politics, because that's where you have a vast majority of the population of this country centered, right? It's really all along the eastern seaboard and all along the western seaboard. That's where everyone lives. And so that's where everybody would be campaigning, and that's where all the decisions for the rest of the country would be made. Now, some of you feel like, well, look at the media and look at D.C., and there's already some reality to that being what's going on. But I would just say this. Democrats claim that they want to bring the country back together. You have Joe Biden, for example, walking around saying that he wants this country to go back to its ideals and a return to normalcy. You have Elizabeth Warren here, though, a Democratic candidate who is offering up something that no serious person could believe would do anything other than, or rather would have a result that would not be further dividing this country into red and blue, separating urban from rural. Some would even go so far as to say if you want a divorce of the American right from the American left, if you want really an expansion of secessionist movements in this country, which would not be the first time, as we know that has happened. But if you want real secessionist movements, then all of a sudden have a federal government that does not care about people who live in entire states, entire regions of the country. That would not serve the purposes the Democrats claim they want of bringing us all together, bringing us back to a political normal. No, what they want is power, and they'll say whatever they have to along the way to get to a place of power. That is the point. That is the purpose. That's what they're trying to achieve here. Everything else is effectively a waste of time. They don't really care. So yeah, abolish the Electoral College. You've also heard Democrats, I'm not just talking about in the media, I'm talking about Democrat politicians talk about what we should do with the Supreme Court. If that does not go their way, then all of a sudden court packing is a discussion to be had. So they talk about institutions and reverence for institutions, and the moment the institution no longer serves their purposes, that does not put them in power, then that institution is to be gutted or transformed or just dispensed with altogether. And they see no irony in this. They see no hypocrisy or lack of principle, because ultimately they understand what this is really all about. It is about power. Everything else is a distraction. Everything else is preposterous. You have, for example, I've got to make sure I don't scratch my little. By the way, producer Brandon has a really excellent beard. I'm trying to get my way up there. Do you think that the beard balms and all those things, does that stuff work? It always just helps grow your beard. I was like, is my face a chia pet? Like, I don't understand.
I mean, unless they were going to be a sponsor, I don't think they work.
Yeah.
It's like,
well, if they sponsor me, then it definitely will.
Yes,
work,
it's
I'll
like
use it until it does work.
It's like taking Propecia if you're going bald. There's no cure for baldness. You either have it or you don't.
So you either have a manly beard or you have a patchy beard. It looks like you're a high school kid.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you may have to give it more time for it to grow out. You have to commit to it.
Do you remember Chia Pets, by the way? I
Of
remember
course.
seeing that commercial.
Chia.
Someone got very rich selling a little cheap made in China clay pot that you could have some weeds grow out of. It's pretty remarkable. I mean, I respect the hustle at that point. You know,
There's always a new character, whether it's a cartoon or someone in politics. You get a chia head of Trump or Obama.
Is that a thing?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I've seen commercials for it.
I guess it's still around. So, Joe Biden has had quite a campaign so far. He is completely protected by the media. They don't ask any questions about his family. Biden's allowed to be very testy, very terse with anybody who doesn't ask any questions about his family. His adult children, or his adult son, Hunter Biden, are completely off limits as far as the media is concerned. Can't ask any questions about any of this, even though not only is Hunter Biden something of a disaster. I mean, it is kind of sad. This guy is just such a mess. Although he's also a millionaire. Guy's got a lot more money than I do. Not because he's good at anything. So how sad can you really feel? He will need that for the alleged, well, he's supposed to be making child support payments at some point, I think. So Biden is out there talking about how terrible Trump is. You get the basics of this, right? He knows the talking points. Joe Biden's not a very impressive or very smart man. This is just the case. This is reality. So he goes around and says things like this about how Trump is a liar, he's terrible, blah, 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 play clip 8.
No, I don't think he has any regard, none, for our laws, for the Constitution, for our democracy, for the truth. Do you ever think you'd see on television from mainstream reporters programs about, Trump's 10,000 lies or whatever it is? I mean, an actual program about a president of the United States where they'd say, we're now going to show you the X number of lies the president's told you. And our children are listening. They're listening. And our silence is complicity. You know, I'm not going to let that happen. At least I'm going to try my best not to let that happen, to see to it that he, in fact, continues.
Joe Biden is a politician that dumb people feel smart for voting for. Yeah. Joe Biden is a politician that if you're dumb, you think, I voted for him, so I'm smart. Because he says the stuff about truth and the Constitution and the stuff and the things. And 14,000 lies that Trump has told. Children are watching that. Yeah, I don't think so. Where were Democrats on the children are watching during the 8 years of the Clinton presidency? Clinton, who was a true predator, by the way, and a liar and a felon. They wouldn't convict him. They wouldn't charge him. But we all know the guy committed a felony. There's no question about it. So where were they during all that? As we know, they were nowhere to be found. I would also note that one of the problems we have with the Obama administration, one of the issues, they like to say there were no scandals. And then, of course, we say, Benghazi and Operation Fast and Furious. We start talking about all the different scandals of the Obama years, the IRS targeting of the Tea Party. There's all this stuff that happened that they just pretend didn't happen. But also remember that you had 90% of journalists afraid for their careers and deeply ideologically invested in not exposing anything, in not unearthing any corruption or anything going on behind closed doors that would be unflattering to the president. So remember that as they always tell you, the Obama years. There was none of this stuff going on during the Obama years. Well, we also had a press corps that was completely in Obama's pocket. It was embarrassing. It was preposterous, the whole thing. How do we even know what was going on behind closed doors? How do we even know what was being said in the Oval Office at any given time? There weren't all these leaks. There weren't all these deep state operatives. And the press was just, the press was worshiping Obama. I mean, that's when I remember I came into politics, into political media then, and it was embarrassing. It's like, Obama's the greatest, the smartest, the wisest, the most wonderful person in the history of all humanity. Okay, well, you're supposed to be speaking truth to power and maybe trying to find out some stuff of note to the American people, but that was never really much of a focus, I suppose. They were much more interested in propping up the Obama administration in every way that they could. But they're trying to prop up Biden. And here's the problem with doing that. Joe Biden's kind of an idiot. He's not somebody who would be a national level politician were he not the senator from Delaware. No offense, Delaware, but not a lot of exciting stuff going on over there. And he's just managed to stay within the system and say whatever he has to say. And he kind of sounds like a politician and looks like a politician and smiles like a politician. And that's really been his role. It's not somebody that you think of with any important. I mean, I think his greatest legislative achievement would have been the Violence Against, the Violence Against Women Act, which is, domestic violence should be illegal in all 50 states, and it is. It's not a federal crime. It shouldn't be a federal crime. But Biden had a moment here. I'm trying to find. Do we have Biden being super weird? Because that's the which one is? You got to hold on one sec. We're gonna get this clip for you in a moment. Stay with me. All right, so Biden, who is the front runner for the Democrats, despite being kind of an idiot. He's a front runner for the Democrats. Okay, he is at a campaign stop of some kind. He's surrounded by a bunch of kids. And I just want you to hear, remember, this is the Democrats who complain about Trump, say he's ruining the republic, he's destroying this country. We live in a country of over 320 million people, probably about 330 now. But let's say we live in a country of over 320 million people. And the best person the Democrats can come up with to defeat Trump and be the next president of the United States, because he's going to be so much better, is this guy. Play clip 2.
And by the way, I sit on the stand and it get hot, I got hairy legs that turn turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They'd look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap. And I tell you what, the men, they're now all men, the guys I work with down here, and they're all guys at the time, they're all good men. Most of them made an awful lot of themselves. And Earl Larkin had a rough time. And some of you knew Earl. I came back as a public defender.
Yeah, my legs got hair on the legs, and the hair would sometimes stick up like a porcupine, and then I would tell people, because I'm putting on kind of a weird politician accent, I would tell the little kids to come on and rub the porcupine hair on my legs, and then sometimes I look at them like, oh man, did I just make your little hand itch from my porcupine hair on my blonde leg? What is this guy talking about? Like, look, I understand. I speak for 3 hours a day here on radio. I do TV and all stuff. You misspeak. Sometimes words come out a little funny. What does he even think he's saying? I remember back in 1972, and I'm here. I had a couple of hairs turn gray a little early, but those hairs were gray. But I remember I saw my buddy Bill, and he says, "You got a couple gray hairs coming out your head. It looks a little bit like you're turning into some kind of a old man, but you're a young man." I mean, but it's just blather. What is it? What is he even saying? Someone explain this to me. The kids would come in and reach in the pool and grab the hair on my hairy legs. They'd pull a couple of those hairs, and I'd say, ow, because I want to make sure they know that the hairs go ow when you pull them under the water. And then they jump on my lap all the time, and I just pretend like I'm everybody's grandpa. And what is he talking? The Democratic frontrunner is blabbering like an imbecile. Have any of you, even really drunk, ever sounded that weird? I was at producer Mark's wedding on Saturday. I had a couple of mezcals, or actually tequila. Damn it, not mezcal. I had some tequilas. True story. I would not have sounded that weird at any point. I wasn't like, hey, I'm out here on the dance floor and I got some hairy legs and a little bit of hair on my chest. I wish I had a little more hair on my chest. Who wants to come sit on Papa Buck's lap? People would have been like, wow, producer Mark, you got a new boss. This is weird. What's going on here? The front runner, my friends. I present to you, ladies and gentlemen, Joe Biden, front runner of the Democratic primary right now, far and away. This is the guy they want to be leader of the free world, and they think you have bad judgment for supporting Trump. Speaking of people who shouldn't be president, and this could really be anybody on the Democratic primary or anybody in the Democratic Party really these days. But you still have Bloomberg in this mix here with all of his billions of dollars and his decent managerial skills, but really poor national level policy ideas. The situation in Hong Kong continues. You have protesters that are standing up to the oppression of the Chinese totalitarian communist government in the mainland. They have recognized that solidarity with America is a very powerful message, and so they are taking video of them singing the U.S. national anthem and waving American flags, and it is heartwarming. Let's be honest about that. By the way, there's a lot going on in Iran right now with suppression of protests and violence, and we don't really know because they're shutting down the internet. But, oh, you mean the Iran that the Obama administration wanted to make a deal with because everything was going to be fine afterwards? It's absurd. But just on the China front for a moment, Bloomberg wants to be president of the United States, and here's what he had to say about, this was in an interview with Margaret Hoover over at Fireland. Here's what he had to say about China. Please play it.
China is doing a lot. Yes, they're still building a bunch of coal-fired power plants.
And they're still burning coal.
Yes, they are. But they are now moving plants away from the cities. The Communist Party wants to stay in power in China, and they listen to the public. When the public says, I can't breathe the air, Xi Jinping is not a dictator. He has to satisfy his constituents, or he's not going to survive.
He's not a dictator?
No, he has to. He has a constituency to answer to.
He doesn't have a vote. He doesn't have a democracy.
That
he's
doesn't
not held
mean he can
accountable by
survive
voters.
if his advisors
is
gave
the
him.
check on him just a revolution?
You're not going to have a revolution. No government survives without the will of the majority of its people. Okay? It's just, he has to deliver services. The Chinese Communist Party looks at Russia, and they look for where the Communist Party is, and they don't find it anymore. And they don't want that to happen.
I mean, the idea that the Chinese government is responsive to sort of a democratic expression of fresh air,
come on,
clean
of course
air.
they are.
I mean, I'm looking at the people in Hong Kong who
Go
are protesting and wondering whether the Chinese government cares what they have to say.
Go back and read the days when you have big pollution in Beijing, and they're doing something about it. That's ridiculous. The trouble is you can't overnight move cement plants and power plants just outside the city that are polluting the air, and you have to have their product. So some of it takes time. And there's always in government, even governments that aren't what we would call a democracy, there's lots of stakeholders who have vested interests. And they have an impact.
All right, we gotta
and that's
cut
why,
this one.
if you listen to the young millennials, let's go in and solve the problem.
We got like the whole interview there. Sorry, we're going on a little bit long. But the point is, Bloomberg is challenged on whether or not Xi Jinping is a dictator. And by the way, everybody who I know and trust who is a true China analyst will say that Xi Jinping is, in many ways, the biggest dictator in China since Mao. It has a more iron grip on things than anyone since Mao Zedong. So why does Bloomberg take this position, though? You have to remember that China, in Trump speak, China for a lot of leftists, liberals, Democrats in this country is alluring in some ways as a system of government. They kind of like the way things get done in China because what China does is it centralizes power and authority in a few hands, in the hands of a dictatorial elite. The Communist Party, about 1,000 people in China's Communist Party, at least who matter. And they make all the major decisions for the rest of the country. Liberals like this. There are even liberals like Thomas Friedman, the most overrated columnist of all time, who have written openly praising China's system and saying, see, China's system is better than ours for the following reasons. They believe this. They like that consolidation of authority and power in the hands of people that are the state. Let me tell you this. I saw this, and I couldn't really independently verify all of where it came from over the weekend. But there's a clip that's making the rounds around the rounds of a man who is getting interrogated in China. He's in this kind of metal box, almost like a metal cage around him. It's not a real cage. It's hard to explain. It's like a medieval torture-looking chair, but he's sitting there and he's being interrogated by the police. And the storyline is that he was in a private chat room and said something bad about he made a joke, I think, about the traffic police who were seizing motorcycles from people for one reason or another. And he made some joke about it in a private chat room, and all of a sudden he finds himself arrested and now being very aggressively interrogated in this very uncomfortable, very ominous-looking chair that he's locked into while you have police officers. And what's fascinating to me as you watch this play out is here these agents of the state. It's very much like what you would expect in The Matrix. You know, it's like Agent Smith sitting down with Neo and saying, Neo, why, Mr. Anderson? They don't call him Neo, they call him Mr. Anderson. I forgot, but yeah, close enough. Mr. Anderson, what is it about your species? You're a virus, Mr. Anderson. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the guy's got skills. You guys know it. So it's a little bit like that. And he sits there and he's getting asked questions like, well, why? What was your purpose? Why would you make fun of the police? And the aggressiveness of his interrogators reminds me of what you get if you make a joke and the woke police, so to speak, come for you. When the left comes for you, there's no humor, there's no forgiveness, there's no mercy. And as I was watching this interrogation video that's making the rounds, and again, I'm assuming it's authenticity. It's been shared by a bunch of blue checks that I know on Twitter, but I don't. But all I could think of is, real or fake. This is what liberals wish they could do to people guilty of wrongthink. How many leftists do you think would be perfectly happy if the police could pull you in, lock you in some chair, threaten you with imprisonment, already arrest you, threaten you with imprisonment because of your wrongthink on, say, LGBT rights issues, on transgender issues? I think a lot of liberals would approve of that. We know this. Liberals right now are advocating publicly for changes to the to federal statutes so that hate speech will be a criminal offense. There was students at, I forget what the university, I think it might have been Yale, I think it was in New Haven, but just walking past an open window said the N-word, were arrested for it. They didn't call anybody, they just said it. And there are liberals who defend this, so-called liberals. Of course, a misnomer for them, meant to throw us off. The same way they lie about what they're really doing and accuse the other side of doing it, they lie about who they are at a very fundamental level. They are anti-liberal. They are the least liberal people you will find anywhere, and they take on that name as a means of confusing the debate and the discussion. Okay. How many liberals do you think you know who would be happy to have police interrogate people for making jokes that are offensive? I think the answer is unfortunately a lot. Angela Merkel, we have this clip. Angela, no, we can't play it because it's all off Deutschland. It's all in German, yeah. I haven't heard from Angela Novaldo. She's still wearing the pantsuits. She thought that Hillary was going to be her sister in power. And then, oh no, das ist nicht gut. Hillary did not win the election in 2016. It's so sad. I would cry, but Germans don't cry. At least not Angela. No crying for Angela. She gave a speech, and I don't know, we had the audio. I was thinking about having some fun with it because it's all in German. But she says that we have to take away your freedom of speech. This was when she was speaking. We have to take away your freedom of speech, or else society won't be free. They are twisting things now into their opposite. This is where the left is going. This is the creeping totalitarianism of left-wing ideology. The state in place of God, the state in control of everything. Your free thoughts and free speech are too dangerous. A society is only free if everybody in that society agrees that there are no harmful thoughts or words out there. Of course, we'll never achieve that. But if you set it up with that premise, that anyone who takes offense, anyone who feels aggrieved, feels unsafe in leftist parlance now because of speech that they don't like, you always have an excuse to shut down those who are trying to share thoughts that you think are outside of what is acceptable. And that, by the way, that set of rules is constantly in flux, is constantly changing. It's not even clear what it is exactly you will be able to say tomorrow. They're still making it up today. Do you think it would really bother liberals if they could have people brought into a police station and interrogated for making a anti-trans joke, a joke that is deemed to be racist? Do you think that liberals would really have a problem with that? I think that they see what's going on in China and think, if only we could get something like that here. But instead of Xi Jinping, you get to have Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and the Democrats in Congress making similar decisions about your life. It should be deeply concerning to all of us because the liberals don't back away from this totalitarianism. They increasingly embrace it. They like it. They like the power. They like to be able to tell you what you can do all the time. It is all about control. And that's why we have to keep an eye on all of these individuals and make sure we don't give in to what it is that they're telling us we must. Because otherwise you're going to have weird blonde hair son man Joe Biden, blonde hairy legs, whatever I can't even remember it was just so weird. I can't remember what he said. He's going to be running the country, folks. That should not keep you safe and warm at night.
And I think to win, there are a few things that must be present. To win, I believe that we must recognize that this issue of 2020 and this election is so much bigger than Donald Trump. It really is. Because it's an obvious point, right? And we can go through the list of all of the reasons why we're all here right now in terms of what is wrong with what's happening in the White House. But not only then should we be committed to what we need to do to turn the page, we also have to think about what we need to do to write the next chapter in the history of our country. And so, in so doing, think about this in terms of the challenges before us and our investment for our children, if nothing else, in the future of our country and in the America we believe in.
Yeah, listen to Kamala Harris about what we need to do to win, because she's not going to win anything. She's not going to win the primary, not going to win the election, not going to win. Not going to happen. So here we are getting advice from somebody who, if anything, does have lessons to teach, but the lessons are through Kamala Harris as a political cautionary tale of somebody who just doesn't have the skill set to do this. And it's because when she talks about this, it all comes across as though someone else wrote this down for her and handed it to her, and now she's just the one sharing the information. Doesn't really believe it, doesn't really care. There's no inspiration, there's no core, there's no connection. It's just whatever she has to say, whenever she has to say it. The election is so much bigger than Donald Trump. Yeah, how so? Maybe the election is going to be bigger than Donald Trump insofar as if Trump loses, then we know that it's no longer about the results that a politician brings about, because the country is better off now than it was under Barack Obama. It just is. Obviously everyone comes in at different points in time, and everyone has we're all dealt a different hand of cards, but we can either judge things or not. We can either try to make decisions based upon results, or we can pretend that all results are the same. A kind of political relativism that would render moot any discussion of whether one politician will be better or worse than another. I don't think that that's a good place for us to go as a country. I think that you would all agree on that. And then you also have Mayor Pete. We've already talked a little about Warren, who wants to I want to abolish the Electoral College. Yeah, that's what needs to happen in this country. You have Mayor Pete out there as well, and he's got a problem. Mayor Pete's problem is that you can't win a Democratic primary with zero African-American support. He has no African-American support, so what does he do? Goes around trying to get more minority support, including nodding enthusiastically while a minority at an event, I don't even know what this event was, but a minority at an event where Buttigieg just showed up, says the following. Play clip 5, please.
And shouldn't we have some conversation whenever people say we call people illegal aliens and all these things that are not human and certainly not Christian? Why can't we just own in America that some of the people that are trying to come from Mexico here are coming back to land we stole? And the reason we took the land is because people wanted to keep their slaves. We have to have some historical clarity.
By the way, Buttigieg, some of you won't be able to see the video, but he was nodding along as this guy is saying this. Stole the land from whom? Stole the land in what way and when? And how are we supposed to make amends for that now? This is where you have politicians, for example, desperate to try to gather more support. Politicians who are making the claim for why we need reparations. In fact, I remember when I was on the Bill Maher show, that was a big topic at that time. It was last August. We're hearing all about how reparations should occur. And then when people discuss the realities therein and what it would really mean and what it would really do for the country, then all of a sudden they walk away from it. They realize it's not feasible. Mayor Pete here is nodding as a guy says that we stole all the... I didn't steal anything. Whether that was Reverend Dr. William J. Barber II asking that question of Buttigieg. I didn't steal anything, neither did you. If we're going to be held responsible for the sins of ancestors, then we no longer have a legal system based in individual rights and human dignity. We have a big fight over social justice and victimization in a historical model.